بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ربي زدني علما نافعا آمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for having me back. It's honestly, it's a privilege that you have found me worthy to come back. The last time I was here was the charity dinner, and honestly, it was a really good turnout. I really enjoyed being there, and we did raise a lot of good money, and inshallah, it's going to go to a good place. And one last week, Asim contacted me to ask me to come back again. I thought, wow, already. And I actually felt really privileged because this is a sign of love and appreciation. And this in itself is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the greatest blessings in life is that when Allah bestows dignity, honor and love in the heart of people for somebody. Because this is also an indication that Allah is also happy with that person. So you being, today hosting me here and giving me this opportunity to do khidmah of deen and dawah of deen, it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why I'd like to thank you for having me again today. Now, last week, when Asad contacted me, there was a different topic. And we were doing mashwara between ourselves. And for those of you who don't know, I've been doing a lot of work with the students over the past years unofficially. I provide counseling for students in Newcastle, youngsters in general, but a lot of the Newcastle University students, Northwood students, contact me personally for advice. Since last year, I've been more active, been invited a few times as an external speaker to deliver some reminders that will be beneficial for all. And alhamdulillah, this year we started a class that takes place on a Monday where we study the seerah of our blessed Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in relation to today's talk, why this topic was chosen, I find that over the years as an Imam, one of the most common queries I get approached by university students, both brothers and sisters, is matters relating to the heart. Now, I don't know why. It's probably because you guys are watching too many Bollywood films, reading too many Nicholas Sparks novels, and get into this fantasy that this love story can happen in my life as well. I can live that love story, and you guys start making your own love stories within the campuses. And then every year I get a call without a miss, a few calls throughout the year. He broke my heart, she broke my heart, and they're crying and this and that. So they come to me for advice. What do I do? What's the situation? And they cry, and it's a really sad reality. But it is a reality nevertheless. This happens. And the reason why it happens is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as it says in the Quran, that لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us and fashioned us in the best of manners. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instilled within human emotions. We are designed in a way that we are filled with emotions. And sometimes one emotion empowers us over the other. And some emotions are very strong. Some emotions are can be damning and destroying if it's not contained. Like when we suddenly develop hatred towards someone. It's a strong emotion. It can destroy our own mental well-being. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has created us with love. And as humans, we crave love. We hasten towards anywhere where we can get love and appreciation. And wherever we find an absence of love, we yearn for it, we crave for it. Like many of you will understand this better than I. Some of you are foreign students leaving the comfort of your homes and your family and your loved ones, your parents. And I know, especially with you guys who are mummy's boys, probably you're missing your home cooked meals that your mom used to prepare for you. You didn't have to worry. Now you guys, what you're doing is probably instant noodles or Ubering food because you guys don't know how to cook, right? And now you think, oh, if I was at home, my mom would have made this for me, my mom would have made that for me. So that absence makes your that love and appreciation for your parents more. So when you guys will be going back to your homes, that's without a doubt you'll be missing your mother or mom when you missed your food for for these past months or the past year. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us with love, fashioned us with love, and he created us in the best of all forms. And this is for this reason, that is why the human nature is such that we crave love. And since the beginning, if you look from the inception of man, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about it in Surah Baqarah, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he was addressing the angels, and he said that that I will create, inni ja'al fil ardi khalifa, that I will send down, I'll create ambassadors onto the earth, like representatives of Allah onto the earth. That's what you and I are, humans. We are representatives of Allah. We are upholding the deen of Allah. Now, if you look into the incident of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam, what happened? Now, it's within our aqeedah to believe that prophets alayhi salam, they can never sin. Right? To say that they sinned is a major sin itself. We don't believe in that. The prophets don't sin. They can be, like for example, Allah says in the Quran that Shaitan made Adam alayhi salam slip. He didn't commit sin. But what was that first thing that he did? He led him astray for a moment with temptation. And this is where the topic, the topic of today's discussion got, whispers of the heart. Why I thought that this would be a very relevant discussion. As I mentioned, that the uni life you would know better than I. I didn't study in university. I did study in an Islamic institute, also in a boarding sort of setting, but much different to that of the university life. The university life, especially for a believer in particular, brothers and sisters, believing men and women alike, like yourselves, it's a big challenge. Because you are surrounded by temptations. Once I was talking to someone with regards to university brochures, and they were saying that in university brochures nowadays, they even advertise, there's a whole section in the university brochures where they are advertising local nightlife to attract people to their universities, because they understand the youth, they like the nightlife scene. They want to party and things like that. So where an institute should be promoting and advertising the educational facilities, and how they're also trying to attract them towards the university by using attractions and amusements of ma'asiyah, of disobedience. Now, most of the time, in what I find in the years I've been working with students, that alhamdulillah, the practicing boys and girls don't tend to fall into this sin of nightlife and drug abuse and things like that, because alhamdulillah, the iman is there to such a degree that it drives them away from that. It protects them, shields them away from that. Well, what do they generally fall into is this the sin of relationships, haram relationships. Now, and what happens is Shaitan is very smart. Shaitan does not work with one person the way he would work with another person. There's no one set plan for him. He leads astray each and every individual using different tactics. Now, when a person is on deen, what Shaitan tries to do, he deceives them by trying to make sin justifiable. So what tends to happen in relationships today? We've seen boys and girls, you see somebody in university and mashallah, she catches your eye, or she's modest and looking down on the hijab and about, so, or the brother's got a mashallah, very handsome beard, and he's always coming into the campus in a thobe, and this is what the type of man I want for myself, and this is the, he looks like an alpha male for whatever reason, and today, and why I mention alpha, because today we live in a day and age that the definition of alpha male has been abused, right? I remember one of my close friends, he was telling me he had a personal issue in his extended family, and he was brought in to solve the situation, and these certain women in his family, they were like, we don't want to marry whoever our parents want to, or suggesting we want alpha males. And I'm like, dude, go and ask what is their definition of alpha male, right? Because if they want to understand the real definition of alpha male, they will not submit to that sort of definition. Because why? We're living in such a day and age where that the concept of feminism has sadly crept into our Muslim society. And that totally goes against the concept of acceptance of alpha males. So it's just the social media and trends that are destroying the minds of our youth. Now, going back to over the years, many cases, and sadly, honestly, so many sisters crying on the phone every year, year in, year out. It's the most common query I get. And I'm having to be on the phone with them for half an hour, 45 minutes, or sometimes even longer. And I find it difficult to say, oh, sister, I need to go now. Or brother, I need to go. And there's been times where brothers are crying. And there's nothing wrong with men crying. People say that's a lack of masculine. No, we're humans, we're men, we have emotions. This is, again, another thing in today's society, toxic masculinity. It's all these different labels. We're living in a world of labels, and this is destroying our nurturing and our development as humans. So one of the common things I face in the common issues I face in the university is when the young brothers and sisters like yourself fall into this sin, and they justify it in their minds. Some will be thinking that, well, I need to get married, might as well start looking now. Others will like, oh, well, well, we're not doing anything haram, we're not having any physical contact, but yes, you're still in communication with this person, right? Or we're just talking. And then you'll find some of these funny, amusing ones where they're showing off in front of their friends in the circles, SubhanAllah, we wake up each other for Fajr. Like, wow, so does that make it halal now, right? I remember, somebody once said, and I was like, we wake each other for Tahajjud Salah and we pray together. And I was like, right, and I was like, wow, so you might as well just stand toe to toe, and are you going to justify that now, So this is what Shaitan does. It's not their fault. It's not the youngsters. So you guys are young, and I'm not trying to patronize or anything like that. It's Shaitan. Shaitan has deceived the greatest of all pious people in the past as well. You look into in the annals of history, you'll find many examples. So there's mashallah, and then everybody else around them, the little pockets of friends and classmates or brothers and sisters. Oh, it's so cute. You guys wake up for Fajr and talk. Oh, mashallah, that's so great. And what's happening is now everyone else is feeding that in that ego of theirs, and we're very pious and mashallah, And then what happens is every other person is starting to build love stories in their minds. They're developing a whole thing. Oh, maybe I can do something like that. And then there's even in the university campus, it's become like a what do you call those live, real life shows where people are watching TV of documentaries of people getting on with their day-to-day lives. Right? That's what happens. You become a spectacle for everybody else. And then everyone starts looking at them. Look at them two couples. Look at them two. And then what happens? There's on one side there's people praising you, mashallah, you guys have kept it halal. May Allah bless you and this, that. And the other side, which is the far more worse, there's people gossiping about you. You become a gossip. You become a means of riba, and people are slandering you and backbiting you. Oh, look at them, they've got no modesty. They think that he's got a long beard and he's praying salah, but he's in a haram relationship with her, and she, mashallah, hijab and this, that, there. And this becomes the reality. And this is what's happening in today's camp. And it's sad, but again, you can't, it's nothing that we can justify, understand. You can only sympathize, because as humans, we're weak. We fall to temptation, especially the day and age we're living, that everywhere we go, there's temptation surrounding us. We've got temptation in our own pockets, in the form of devices. Today, it's become so easy to sin, but it's become so difficult to do good. So the university campuses have become a breeding ground for relationships. And wallahi, I've been Imam for 15 years, right? And I can say this, and I'm not a man of giving statistics, so I'm not going to give you stats. But majority of those cases where there were, subhanAllah, I thought there was a halal relationship and it was going somewhere, majority of them end in some way or the other. Fortunate were those who ended in a good terms and they parted ways without any malice and hatred between them. But most cases, what happens? They end in heartbreak and hatred. That person who was the first thought as soon as you wake up and the last thought in your mind, and that person you've been daydreaming about, becomes that person that you curse day and night. Look how the tables have turned. Because love and hate are two both strong emotions. And for a person to hate someone so much that they loved at one point, you only can imagine how much they must have loved them in the past for them to suddenly hate them again. Most of these cases happen. And shaitan justifies in your mind. There was a time, it was many years ago, a university student, she called me, and this was my early years of being an Imam, so at that time, these incidents were very new to me, so a lot of things used to shock me. Nowadays, nothing shocks me anymore. Sadly, become immune to it, And she called me, and it was around about 8 o'clock in the evening, I recall, and she said, Imam, I want to take my hijab off. And I was like, why is she calling me? Are you trying to seek permission? Like, oh yeah, Imam, I'll give you a fatwa, yes, you can take a hijab. It was like, why is she calling me? So I said, can you elaborate, because I'm quite confused with your, just statement you just made. And she said to me that, look, I've never ever committed any sin. Alhamdulillah, I always tried to live my life according to obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then suddenly, my eye fell upon somebody, and I assumed this person to be a good person, and I developed feelings for this person, and we got into a relationship. And, as time goes by, what happens? Remember, the biggest deception of shaitan is when he feeds that idea into your mind that when you can justify a sin. That is one of the biggest deceptions of shaitan. When you justify a sin in your mind, right, know that your iman is at a critical state. Right? So in her mind, she was telling me that in her mind, she thought, well, we're going to get married anyway, and this and that. So it all started with calls and then meetings, and then it led from one thing to the small physical sins, and it eventually led to zina. And when when she commits zina, she felt the guilt in her heart. And the guilt came, and that guilt comes only when there's iman in your heart, and strong iman, right? Because when there's no iman in your heart, it won't make a difference whether you're sinning or doing good deeds. You won't be able to tell the difference between the two. So she was like, she approached this man, whoever this man was, and she said, look, we need to get married. We've committed a sin, and this, it can't carry on like this. So he's like, what do you mean marriage? I didn't think about marriage before. We're just in a relationship. This guy led her on because his intentions was nothing beyond lust. And this is the reality today. We're living in a day and age where, one time, and I totally don't like this concept of labels, right? There was one time, and I still believe it, that if it's a relationship, it's either of love or lust. There's no third, right? But today we're living in a day and age, we've been heavily influenced with society. There's different, we're dating now, or we're in and before dating, it's a crush, it's an infatuation, or it's this and that. And there's so many labels out there, And then what happens is that they don't want to make you reach that level of that point where you're actually in a love relationship. Why? Because that's when it comes to a commitment. Because when you're deeply in love with somebody, you reach that level of commitment. Now you want to go somewhere. You want to establish a complete relationship where there's no other person. You want to settle down with this person, whether it's in the form of marriage or non-marriage, right? For us, obviously, there's nothing exists outside the fold of marriage. But before that, what happens is, oh, we're just dating and this and that. And then that one, the guy or the girl, one of them are starting to develop more feelings than the other person. But what happens is, because the society we're living in, that commitment to one person is that, oh, you're too young for it, or you're too young to get married, or you're too young to get in a serious relationship. What's happening is that they become quite hesitant to tell each other their feelings. And suddenly one of them can't, and they crack and say, look, I'm in love with you. I want to take this to the next level. And the other person, oh, this was nothing beyond just us dating. They spend nights together, but now this is nothing but beyond dating. This is the reality of the dunya that we're living in today. Abuse of this concept of love. Love is such a beautiful thing. Allah, if you look in the Quran, how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refer himself? He's always referring himself to as being the most merciful, the most compassionate, Rahman, Rahim, Wadud. More times you'll find Allah making reference to him as far as love, a loving being, than a being who is a chastising kind, or a being of a punishing kind. Because Allah is full of love. This is what Allah wants us to have, that we have this relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of love, not of fear. And this is the reality. And this sister, so going back to this point, she goes like, but then obviously this guy, he had his fun, and he moved on, and she felt destroyed. She felt deceived. And now what's happened is, and I said, okay, so why is this whole, where's that hijab coming from? She says to me, Imam, I feel like I don't deserve to wear the hijab. I feel like I am dishonoring the hijab. So that's why I want to take her off. So I said to her that, look, Shaitan got you into a haram relationship. He made you do zina. He's made you commit sin, right? He has had that control of you. The moment you give up your hijab, he's had complete dominance over you. Then there will be a point in your life where you'll have no ounce of deen. And she said, Subhanallah, Imam, I'm so glad I spoke to you. Because I made my decision that I'm not worthy of wearing the hijab anymore. I need to take it off, because I've committed such a great sin, that how I, as a sinful person who committed sin, how can I still adorn myself with the hijab and present myself as a practicing woman? But I'm so glad to it, because now you've talked me out of it. Because look at that, this is what the shaitan is doing. And today, today, love has, the concept of love and has been, it's just one of the most abused terms, like halal. Today, the most abused terminology in this world is halal. We just to consume something, to fulfill our desires and our appetite. We'll just look at a label, and just because it says halal, we'll accept it. We don't even realize that there is a research required to find out in reality where that source of food is, whether it is in fact halal. Is it being the zabih has done in accordance to Sharia or not? We just see a label and then we accept it. Similar is the case with relationships. And today, and I think to guys, like, what do you boys and girls know about love, man? What do you know about love? Today it's become, being in a relationship, it's like having a pocket with your phone inside it. That just every person needs to have a phone in the pocket. Every person feels the need that I need to have some person in my life. It's become a trend. I need to have somebody in my life. And this is the concept of relationship love, where it's meant to be something beautiful. It's become the most abused thing. That's why you'll find, and you guys will know it better than I. Jumping from one relation to another, we break up with them, and we break up with her, and then it takes us time to get over it. If in fact, if it was a real love, or else if it wasn't something deep, you'll just jump onto the next person, and next person, and next one. But look at it yourself. Analyze this reality of your life. That what sort of a person are you, that you're jumping from one person to another person to another person? Isn't that a sign of immorality in itself? And aren't you enabling somebody to gossip? And aren't you enabling to be the gossip and the talk of the town? Now, what does that tell you? That at the time, especially nowadays, we're living in a social media era where nothing is hidden and everything is exposed, right? Everything's exposed. Nobody can hide anything anymore. A time will come when you really want to get married, right? You may have sinned and you made tawbah and things like that. And a good prospect comes and you want to marry, whether you found this person yourself, whether your family found it, or the conventional method, and suddenly somebody brings up this topic. I knew this guy, I knew this girl in university. She jumped from this person to that person to this guy to that guy. Or he jumped from this girl to that person. Or I used to date this person. That moment where you found that one person, the ideal suitor, and it all gets tarnished, who is there to blame then? You've left a track record behind you. You're only yourselves to blame in that situation. There's so many things to take into consideration. Honestly, the truth is, what do we actually know about love to understand what relationship is? And if you truly love somebody, there will be no space for lust. Remember that is a rule of the thumb. If you're truly in love with someone, and you have thoughts of lust for them, then that is not love, that is lust. Because if you really love someone, you will respect them in every form, mentally, physically, in every way. And that the thought of lustful thoughts enter your heart, then that is not love. Because you're picturing and imagining this person in a way that is forbidden for you in this instance. So is that feeling and emotion, is that really love? It isn't. And this is the most reality today, the reality of most relationships. Even if you're waking your so-called bay in the middle of the night for tahajjud or fajr, and we're praying fajr together and things like that, but you're having thoughts in your head, that is still a haram relationship. And every haram relationship ultimately ends in a very ugly way. Very ugly way. And a lot of the times I find the students, because of that trauma they go through of breakups, the very main purpose why they came to university, it is gone out the window now. They can't focus and study anymore. The marks are going, they're failing in the exams, the assignments are not being, deadlines are not being met, they start disassociating themselves from friends, appetite goes, they go, and I've seen students mentally breaking down. Everything's gone out the window, all because that they just gave their heart to somebody. I'm not saying that don't look, there's a time and place for everything. But now is the time to get your degree, to get that mark, that first mark, the top mark, and focus on that. But today you see that, and the truth is, most of you, these relations, they don't know what love is. They'll see somebody, and so they're hearing wedding bells on their heads already. You just seen this person, dude, and you're already planning kids and everything with this person. And then that person rejects you, then the next beautiful woman walks past and think, oh, maybe, and then suddenly wedding bells are ringing again. And then that girl rejects you, then you jump in there. Like, how many wedding bells are you thinking of? Right, you're making love stories in your head one after another. That's not love. That's lust. True love is that when you see somebody, everybody else becomes irrelevant to you. The famous, and I always make reference to when I usually talk about Allah and love for Allah, Qais, Qais and Layla, more famously known as Layla Majnun. Qais, he loved this girl called Layla, right? Historians write that she was not actually beautiful. And she was completely dark in complexion. She had no beauty in her. So they asked Qais, like, what do you see in her? What do you see in her? She's not beautiful, right? And he replied that if you saw what I saw in Layla, then you would also be madly in love with her. It was beyond physical love. It was beyond the attractions of the eyes. He saw a different beauty. Today, the first thing we look at, is how fit this person is. Attractive, physical, in the physical. Yeah, not to say that physical attraction isn't a prerequisite. It is. But in this example and there's many examples I can go and the talk will go, because if I start talking about Qais and Layla, there's so many, the ulama and the Sufis and scholars use a lot of their incidents, a lot of instances from their life as ways to refer to actual love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if I go in there, the talk's going to get too long. But to realize this, that it's not just something that you as it's a modern day problem. Modern day problem is that it's leading us to the wrong notion of relationships and love, especially when it leads us to physical zina. It was something it's been a weakness in man from the ages. Let's look into the lessons of the pious predecessors, right? I always refer to the Sahaba. That you think that today we know what love is, we know what romance is, we don't know nothing, right? And you think today is a challenge, right? You will see that, go outside, how easy it is to commit sin. You will know better than me. But what will protect us from this is our iman. You know, there was an incident, Abdullah ibn Hudhafa radiallahu ta'ala anhu, right? His brother was more famous, Khunais radiallahu ta'ala anhu. But Abdullah ibn Hudhafa radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was known for many incidents. I'm just going to focus on one point to understand the power of iman and how it can protect you from fitna and temptation. He became more known during the time of the Khilaf of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And at that time there was an expedition and a battle with the Byzantines, Romans. And in those battles, a great number of Muslims were captured. The Caesar of Rome at that time, his name was Heraclius. And he said to his people, you know, from amongst these captives, bring me one who is the most influential. So somebody said to him, the Abdullah ibn Huzafa is your man, radiallahu ta'ala. So he was brought in front of him. And he thought, let me play mind games on him. Let me break this guy. If I can break him, then the other ones will follow suit. So he asked him that, become a Christian, renounce Islam, and I will give you half of my wealth. So Abdullah ibn Huzafa radiallahu ta'ala says, even if you give me half of your wealth and the wealth of the whole Arab world, I will not denounce Islam to the time equivalent to the blinking of an eye. So what does he do? He says, okay, fine. He imprisons him, right? He tried to lead him to tempt him by wealth. That didn't work. What did he do? He imprisoned him, and he said that find the most beautiful woman in our society and get her to seduce him. So they found that this woman comes into his cell. On one hand, you find a young, handsome Arab youth, right? And then another had one of the beautiful women of the Byzantine era amongst the Romans. And she's approaching him from every angle. The historian adds that if she approached him and tried to seduce him and entice him from the right, he turned towards the left. She approached him from the left, he turned towards the right. She gave up eventually, trying so much to seduce him. She went back and she said, this man is not human. He is a stone. Meaning that he's a statue, that he had no reaction towards me. Can you imagine? She's throwing himself to him. Today, you guys are going around chasing girls, right? And not you guys in general, in particular, I'm not pointing fingers, but generally, today, guys running. Where's the manhood gone? Chasing girls of what? No status, who have no self-esteem and moral in the town centers we see today. This woman, the most beautiful woman, she's throwing herself at him and he's rejecting her. That didn't work. So the temptation of seduction went out the window. What he did, he said, starve him for 3 days. For 3 days and 3 nights, no food, no drink. Then what does he present him with? He presents him with pork. He presents him with wine. Now, in this instance, according to Sharia, if a person is starving and there's nothing to do, then to save your life, you can consume haram at that moment. It becomes Sharia. It becomes in a state of complete desperation. But Abdullah ibn Hudhafa radiallahu ta'ala did not give in. And Heraclius says to him, does not your religion permit you to have they consume alcohol and pork in such instances? He goes, it does. But I did not want to give you the opportunity to have satisfaction that you have led a ummati of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a follower of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, astray. So that did not work. He again offered him. He said, okay, made another offer. This time he says, I'll give you half my wealth and I'll give you my daughter. Look at him. He was trying to play mind games after mind games. And it's still not budging. It's a long incident, and he threw this offer at him, that offer at him, but he did not give in. Eventually, he told him to kiss his forehead, and it was a long conversation, and he rejected it, and he only agreed. He goes, I will only kiss your forehead if you free all 300 captives of the Muslims. And then he agreed. He did not want to submit to it, but because he was looking for the well-being of his fellow Muslim brothers, he kissed the forehead. But when he then got freed, and those 300 Muslims along with got freed, went back to Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala. Umar radiallahu anhu, Amir al-Mu'minin, kissed him on his forehead, and he instructed all the Muslims around him to kiss the forehead of Abdullah ibn Hudhafa. When your iman is in its right place, no tyranny and no temptation will make you flinch an iota. This is the iman of the Sahaba. Look at, they also felt. Tha'laba radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was he? He was a youngster like you. Some say he was 13 years old, some say he was 16 years old, some say he was 17-year-old. He was the errand boy of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, young child. At one time Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam sent him to an errand. And en route he got lost somewhere. And he came to a place and there were tents there. And the wind blew a little, and a bit of a niche of the tent was exposed, and there was a woman bathing there. And he went and he looked into the tent. The temptation had the bed. Look, this is a young Sahabi, young boy, during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yet he fell also into temptation. As soon as he realized what he had done, that he looked at a woman who was bathing, and he realized he committed zina of the eyes, he screamed out. And in complete guilt, he escaped. He did not return back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? He feared. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam of this incident, then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will not look at him with love anymore. So he escaped into the wilderness, into the woods, into the forests. Now the next day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is asking about, where is Tha'laba? And no one can answer the question. So then he dispatched Sahaba to go and search for him. In one narration it's mentioned Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu went with Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu. Another narration it mentioned Abu Bakr was accompanying radiallahu anhu with Umar radiallahu anhu. They came to a place and there was a man there, and the question, have you seen this young boy? We're looking for him. And they described him and things. And then they said, maybe you're referring to the crying boy. I said, what crying boy? There's a boy, he comes from the wilderness every evening around Maghrib time, and he comes and he takes milk from me, but he's always crying. He's always crying. Even when he takes the milk and he's drinking, he's crying so much that the tears of his eyes fall into the utensil of that he drinks the milk from, and he's drinking milk that is filled with tears that are falling from his eyes. So they said, so Sayyidina Umar radiallahu and his companion weren't certain. So they waited. So come that time, he comes every day, he takes a bit of milk, and in that moment he says, and then Umar radiallahu calls out to him. He calls out to him, and instantly Tha'laba radiallahu ta'ala, in shock, he drops the utensil of milk, and he tries to escape. And he says, why have you come? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has asked for you. That's why we have come. We're coming looking. And he says, no, I cannot go back to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Allah must have sent down wahi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must have sent down a revelation exposing my sin. And that is why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam wants to see me. And Umar radiallahu is trying to console him. He goes, no, it is not the case. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is concerned about you. But he's still not budging. He does want to. So it came to a point, the historians read, that they dragged him back. But when they found him, he found him in a complete disheveled, weak, ill state. And it would be because he was there in the wilderness, no proper nourishment, no roof above his head. He was in a disheveled, his clothes are ragged. He was constantly, what the locals would describe, that he was constantly crying. They would find him day in, day out crying over what? That one sin that he committed. And that one sin, it wasn't even the ultimate sin, because what does the hadith say? The first glance is for you and the second glance is upon you. He realized instantly when the first glance fell upon that woman bathing, he realized the sin. But still that his iman was such that he could not find it within himself to present himself and be in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was so ill, so they took him home. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was informed, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we found Tha'laba, but he's at home. He's not in a state to come to you. He's not in a state to come to you. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to him. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw him in a terrible state, he placed his head on his thigh. And the Tha'laba says, Ya Rasulullah, do not place this sinful head on your blessed thigh. I am not worthy of this. Has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent revelation concerning me? Have you been informed of my sin? And he's crying, and Rasulullah sallallahu trying to console him, and seeing that he's in complete weak state, disheveled. And then Rasulullah is consoling him, telling that, look, that make tawbah, Allah will, and have hope in the mercy of Allah, and Allah will forgive. Suddenly he says, he's shivering and he's moving, and Rasulullah says, oh Tha'laba, what is wrong with you? And he says, I feel like ants are crawling all over my body. He goes, yeah. He says, oh Tha'laba, this is your time for you to pass, recite the Shahada. And he recites the Shahada and leaves this world. Look how he left this world. One sin he committed, and it won't be even considered as a sin. It was a mistake, but he realized his mistake straight away. He realized his mistake straight away, but he could not. The guilt was killing him. The guilt was killing him, and because of that, he could not face Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that guilt is a good thing. Once one of my ustad, Mawla Adam Sahib, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him, I was in my final year. And he said to me, we were just suddenly sitting, standing, and it was dinner time, and he approached me, and we're having a totally random conversation, like you may say. And suddenly he just said to me, he said, Ali Asad, you know when a person sins, but he has a guilt in his heart, and that's that remorse in that he knows he's sinning. But because of his weakness of his iman, he keeps on falling into sin. But the guilt makes him do tawbah, and he regrets, but falls into sin. One day, Allah will give him the opportunity to do tawbah. What he means by one day, Allah will accept that tawbah, and Allah will forgive his sins. Now, in that moment, I don't know. You get pious people who can see, they have kashf, and they can see the sins of others. Or I don't know if my ustad saw my sins or not, but I was wondering that why did he just randomly come up to me and give me this advice? But that advice stuck to me all my life. It gave me hope that no matter how much we sin, if we truly repent and we have regret and remorse in our heart, then Allah will most certainly forgive us. That is not to say that, oh, don't know what, I'll carry on sinning, I'll just do istighfar, I'll make dua and Allah will forgive me. No, that is again a deception. If while you sin, that regret and remorse is there is hope for you that there is still iman in your heart. But if you're sinning and you do not feel that remorse and regret in your heart, what does that tell us about our iman? That our iman is at a very critical state. Another incident I will say, which will be more relevant to us, and I will start summarizing. There was a famous Sahabi, his name was Marthad ibn Abi Marthad al-Ghanawi. He was a young, handsome, well-built, strong Sahabi. He brought Islam at an early age, and then at that time, prior to Islam, he had a lover. Her name was Anaq. They were madly in love. From what the historians describe, it's not just love that we think. They were madly in love, like inseparable. Completely. He would spend nights with her, days with her. They were totally inseparable. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instilled the light of Iman, the nur of Iman in his heart, he realized that he can no longer be in this relationship with her. And then the hukam and the order of hijrah came, and he migrated, like with many other Sahaba. And he left this girlfriend and love of his behind. But as humans, naturally, he was still pining over her. times would be in the night. The ulama described that he would miss her naturally. Everyone knew of their love. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was aware of his love. They had this crazy, deep, dark relationship. Why I say dark, we'll come to that soon. They had a crazy, deep, dark love and a relationship. It so happened once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was selecting special individuals to go back into Mecca and to free the captive Muslims that were in Mecca and bring them to Medina. One of the men who was selected was Marthad ibn Abi Marthad al-Ghanawi, because he was strong and he was young. So he was on a mission, right? He was on a mission, and he went, and he describes that night was such a dark night, and it was a night when the moon was full. And then he starts narrating this incident. He said he's there, proper, like a secret agent type sneaking into Mecca. And he's describing that he had his back against the wall. That's how he was sliding in and entering and infiltrating the area. He had his back against the wall. But because it was a full moonlit night, his shadow was obviously visible. It so happened he was passing by Anaq's house. And Anaq, this is what I mean, that this is how deep their love was. Anaq recognizes him by his shadow. How many of you can claim that you love somebody like that? Nobody can say that your love is that deep, that you recognize somebody. You guys need ringtones, specific ringtones, so you can know that that person is calling you specifically, or else you'll ignore everybody else's call. Right? She recognized him by his shadow and said, "Oh, Murthad, is that you? Oh, Murthad, is that you?" And he's obviously trying to avoid her. And then she kept on shouting, and he's like, "If I don't respond to this woman, she's going to bait me out. She's going to expose me." So he goes, "Yes, I am Murthad, I'm Murthad." And she said to him, "Come to me tonight, spend the night with me." And this is where he responded. He says, "Allah has made zina haram upon me." Meaning that I cannot I've accepted Islam. I can no longer be in a relationship, and a haram relationship with you. At this moment, the ulama mentioned that she felt very disturbed because she was a mushrika, she wasn't a believer. She didn't understand the concept of zina. So she took it even more offensively, that is you trying to call me a loose woman, an immoral woman? Is he trying to say I have no self-esteem? So when I say dark love, this is how it took turn when he was refusing her. She said, "If you do not come to me tonight, I'm going to scream and shout and tell everybody that you are here, you've infiltrated and you're our Mecca, and you're trying to free the captives, Muslim captives, and escape with them." So he still rejected her. So then she starts shouting that Murthad is here, and he's escaping with the Muslims, go after him. Long story short, right? A lot of things happen in between. The next day he comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says, "Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, permit me to marry Anaq." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stays quiet. Normally when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stays quiet in the fiqh, it means that he approves of a situation. He is not approving of the situation. He's silent because he knows how sensitive of a situation this is. He knows that Murthad knows that this is a haram relationship, and he cannot permit it. Rasulullah knows that Murthad knows. So he does not need to tell Murthad that, "Oh Murthad, I can't permit this." He's remaining silent because he knows the love between the two. The deep love between the two, he knows it. But how can he say something against it and that he may hurt him? Because he knew how madly he was in love with her and how madly she was in love with him. You'd realize the dark love that she literally said that if you can't have me, then no one's going to have you. I'm going to get you killed. This is the same woman who was trying to kill him, yet he's still madly in love with her, right? And he's coming to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and saying, "Ya Rasulullah, permit me." So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stayed silent. It's then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down a revelation that a zani cannot marry a non-zani. A believer cannot marry a zani, right? And it's not befitting for a believer that a believer marries a zani. It's not befitting for a believer to marry an adulterer. It's not befitting for a believer to marry a mushrik. And as soon as this ayat was revealed and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam revealed the verses to him, what was his reaction? Did he go and try to justify the case or look for loopholes like today we do? Sign of hypocrisy is whenever there's a hukum from Allah and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and we're trying to find loopholes, this is a sign of nifaq, it is a sign of hypocrisy. Did he try to find loopholes? No. He straight away accepted. In fact, the ulama mentioned that he became happy. Why? Because one, Allah sent a verse down concerning him exclusively in that moment. And also what did Allah do? That Allah addressed him as a believer. He was that, in this ayat, Allah is saying that you as a believer, you're a mu'min. Allah is declaring you as mu'min. Allah in His book, in His record, He's accepted you as a believer, as a mu'min. He's like happy now that Allah has referred to me as a believer and He accepted this instant. Straight away, he made peace with his relationship. That I cannot go into this relationship. That one sacrifice, great sacrifice he did. And it's not an easy sacrifice. Those of you who know who have ever been in love before and who've felt heartbreak, may Allah protect you all from it. But those of us who know what heartbreak is, you will know that it is one of the most painful emotions. You will never want to wish it on anybody. The pain of heartbreak is damning and destroying. When someone breaks your heart, someone breaks your trust and loyalty, how low and cheap you feel in that moment, there is no pain greater than that. And those of you who felt that, you can relate. I don't want you to go and say, yes, Imam, I felt it too. I don't want you to expose yourself that way, or don't tell anybody else. But you will know. And those of you who don't know, you brothers and sisters are lucky. Allah has saved you from it. Because it can destroy you in every way. Yet, Murtad radiallahu ta'ala anhu accepted it. And he made this sacrifice. Look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevated him. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him an expert in the Quran. He became an expert in the knowledge of the Quran. Number two, he became an amir of an expedition later on. An expedition took place and he became the amir of it, a young boy. And number three, he became a martyr in that expedition. One sacrifice he made and Allah gave him status upon status and favors upon favors. This is the power of Iman. When we fall into temptations, what does that tell us? It tells us that our Iman is at a very weak state. When we fall into sin, what does that tell us? That our Iman is in a weak state. And when our Iman is in a weak state and we're committing sin and we're not feeling the remorse from it, remember this is where your Iman is in most critical place. When you do not feel remorse after a sin, that's when you know that your Iman is at a critical state. And if you don't make any effort and concern for your Iman at that moment, you are opening your way to more greater sins, and may Allah forbid possibly to kufr. Because now you can't differentiate between right and wrong. You're not feeling that guilt and remorse within you that I've just disobeyed Allah. I've just transgressed the limits of Allah, and you're not feeling that remorse and regret. That is when your Iman is at a critical state. This is why it's so important. Do you know why? This is why you find in a hadith so many times where the Prophet ﷺ is always saying, make concerns upon your Iman. Make concern for your Iman. How do we do this? As believers, we know obviously what we need to do. We need to obey Allah, we need to pray Salah, we need to do this. If we are doing it and we are content with our Iman, that is another deception. Remember, today I'm mentioning many deceptions. Like I said, shaitan works in many ways. How does it deceive the rightful people as well, those who are praying and doing the ibadat and worshipping Allah? One of the ways of deception is when he makes that person feel content with the deen that he has. That alhamdulillah, I'm praying my salah, I'm fasting in the month of Ramadan, I'm giving my zakat, I'm going hajj, I'm doing my part. When you feel that you are doing your part and you're doing enough, this is another deception from shaitan as well. Because he's restricting you and he's making you content. Who are we to be content with our iman when you've got Tha'laba radiallahu ta'ala anhu, all day, all night, for weeks he was crying over a sin that would not be even considered a sin. It was a mistake, and even if it was a sin, he made so much tawbah that Allah probably would have forgiven him everything, every other sin that he had committed. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that Allah is not angry with you, I am not angry with you. And on his deathbed he's crying. Who are we to be content with our deen when people, the likes of Khalid ibn Walid, who gave his whole life for deen, and yet on his deathbed he's saying, I do not know how Allah will fare with me on the day of judgment. And we are content with our deen. So this is why we need to make concerns. You know, when our relationship with Allah is in its right place, everything else will fall into place. And Allah will protect us and shield us from hurt. And Allah will protect us from grief. Allah makes this promise in the Quran. وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. You are not meant to be grieving and feeling sorrowful and depression and sadness. وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ, because you are the elite. Allah is telling the believers, you are born to be rulers of the world. You are born to be the most elite people of the world. So grief and sorrow is not meant to be affecting you. But we have stooped so low with our iman that all this is evident in our life. That is why we need to reflect on ourselves. You will always be tempted. No matter how practicing you become, you will always be tempted. As I said, shaitan never gives up. But remember in that instance that if shaitan doesn't have power over you, your nafs will have power over you. Between the two, the greater enemy is your nafs. Because nafs is the one who gives in to the whispers and the suggestions of shaitan. Shaitan tells you to do it. Do it, encourages it. But nafs is the one that accepts it. You need to suppress that, your carnal desires. How does that come? Is when you are working towards the iman and deen. What do? First of all, we disassociate ourselves from people who are influencing us into sinning. Whoever they may be, you may lose your friends if you're in that relationship with somebody and that person, even though you're waking each other up for Fajr, right? But you're committing sin, that person is not right. Because if that person was right for you, they would say, do you know what? Yes, there is something there between us. There is something there between us, but we are in a haram relationship. We need to put this to a halt until we can do something about it. And doing something about it doesn't mean like today, and I say this a lot, that may Allah respect those scholars who give this solution and advice. But this advice, I feel, in my personal opinion, is not the right. You'll see so many talks that if you really love her, then approach her wali. If you really love her, then go put a ring on it. Dude, you're still a student. You're living on 20 hours job. You're living off student loan and bursary. You can barely feed yourself. How are you going to provide for this woman? So it's not practical. So don't follow that advice. That advice is not going to be, if you really love this girl, go and approach the wali. If you really love this girl, make her halal. Make it halal. Go on. You're not ready to make that commitment yet. So that advice, and with all due respect to those ulama, they probably have mentioned at a time where that was relevant in that sense. Today's day and age, it is not practical. Especially these guys, you guys, unless you guys got good, culinary skills, or you got a good financial stability and all that, you can do it. If you can't, then stay out of it. And sometimes I remember this one guy, I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time, but it's a very sensitive topic. I remember this guy, a young lad like himself, he approached me And he goes, I'm interested in the person, this, that, the other, and I really want to approach her father about it, and this, that, and I said, how long have you known her? I said, 4 months. And I was like, 4 months? And you're already marrying, and like, how does she feel about you? He goes, I don't know. I was like, what? You don't even know how this girl feels about it, and you want to go rocking up to this girl's house and say, Uncle G, I want to marry you. You don't even know how she feels. Just because they just interacting with each other on class, on exchanging notes, and he's already... And this is what, and he goes, well, I just want to make it halal, because we've been advised to make it halal, we've been advised to go to... And this is what I mean. This guy wasn't in the place and position to go and make it halal and go approach the wali. Imagine he went to the father and he said, Uncle Ji, I want to go and marry your daughter. And then he slapped the door on his face. Or the girl would have said, dude, we're just classmates. Where did you make this whole relationship idea in your head? And all he did, and he's innocent, he's falling, but this advice is not practical in this day and age. So this advice of making halal is not practical. Do not fall into that misconception, because then you'll start working towards, and it's going to be all for nothing. And then what will happen? That it's just going to fall apart. There's a time and place when and uni life is not the time to make love stories. You'll get that time, inshallah. Allah has created everyone in pairs, and your other half will come. The more you need to focus is now in the moment. So first of all, yes, disassociate with those people. If those people are enabling you, encouraging you, enticing you towards sin, stay. You may lose close friends, associate. You will know better if those people are the ones are encouraging towards haram. Disassociate. Number 2, associate yourself with the right people. MashaAllah, you have Islamic Society, ISOC of Durham University, and come. This is the place, masjid, right? Get involved with the ISOC society within boundaries, brothers in their own little circles, sisters in own little circles, and things like that. Get into and you can identify which person will be good for your iman, which person will be bad for your iman. Doesn't mean that everybody who comes to ISOC, they're all righteous. There will be some people who are sinners as well, and there will be some people who will be bad for us. Disassociate. You pick. And most importantly, build your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today the most alienated concept is romanticizing our relationship with Allah. I did a whole long talk on it. I don't want to go into it, or else you guys are going to be here for another hour. But it's an alienated concept, that how do I be in love with Allah? Because today our concept of understanding of love is what? It's lustful, it's physical. So when we hear love, it means everything else: holding hands, hugging, and walking into the sunset, and all this, that, the other, right? And sending love message to one another, and all that. That is not love. This is what I mean, that understand the concept of love. Be in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Build that relationship. How do we do it? Right? If you've not got the faraid in your life, first of all, establish the faraid in your life. Make up all the salahs that you have missed in your life. Do qada of those salah. And one thing today, and this is a sign of qiyamah as well, sadly, today we are distancing ourselves from the Quran. Build a relationship with the Quran. Right? Make it a habit daily to read even one page of the Quran. How long does it take? 13 lines, 15 lines? How long? It won't take, even if we our tajweed and our recitation a week, 5 minutes? We can't spare 5 minutes for the Quran? Daily. The tilawat of the Quran falls in twofold. One is the back-to-back recitation of the Quran. And no, it doesn't mean just for Ramadan. This is the reality. Today we pick up the Quran when it's Ramadan, or when someone's passed away in our family, and then the rest of the year it's collecting dust on the shelf. The Quran, with the Quran, there's twofold of forms of tilawah. One is the back-to-back reading. You start the reading, you end it, and you start again. So you do a khatam after khatam after khatam in a perpetual cycle. And number 2 is the masnoon tilawat, like Surah Yasin after Fajr, Surah Waqi in the evening, Surah Sajda and Mulk in the evening, Surah Kahf on a Friday, Surah Dukhan on a Thursday evening. Both are necessary in a life. But I'm not going to tell you to go jump deep and straight away. Start with those of us who are not habitual of Quran, read 1 page a day. Can we do that? If we all make an intention that inshallah, those of us who have a habitual of Quran, reciting Quran daily, increase the pages, right? Build that relationship with Allah. The Quran is where Allah is talking to us. We stand in salah to talk to Allah. When we want Allah to talk to us, open up the Quran. Daily one page. Can we not do one page? Today we got mobile phones that has a Quran. If we can't carry the Quran with us, ideally the Muslim sunnah is to recite the Quran from the Mus'haf, from the book itself. That is the proper sunnah. And today you can do it, whether in university, come into the ISA, come into the masjid, you'll find Quran everywhere. Keep a Quran in your homes as well. It's a blessing. In your dormitories, in your apartments. One page a day. One page a day. Can we do that? Of course we can. And secondly, bring in adhkar in your life. Adhkar, the ulama mentioned there's three forms of adhkar. One is the dhikr relating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, Allahu akbar. There's form, they call it tasbih, tahmeed, tahleel, takbir, right? Combine all of them, and we're lazy ummah today. So to do those all separately is going to be difficult. So combine it. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar. You're praising Allah. You're thanking Allah. You talk about the unity of Allah. You talk about the greatness of Allah. And make it a habit 100 times, 200 times, or daily, morning and evening. This is to gain the proximity and the increment of Allah and increase your iman. Second is salawat upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Daily. Salawat upon Rasulullah is not just according to the hadith on Thursday nights and Friday. Yes, those days it reaches Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam directly. But every day we should make it a habit to send salawat upon Rasulullah sallallahu 100 times, 200 times. Make it fixed that, today I will do 100, 200 times. But make it a daily habit. And what will that do? It will create the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in our heart. It will gain us his nearness on the day of judgment, and will fill us with the love to implement sunnah in our lives. And number three is istighfar. Wallahi, istighfar is, one alim was saying, this ummah's greatest blessing is istighfar. Why? Previous nations, whenever they sinned, what happened? Allah will send adab down. Today, we commit a sin. All we need to do is turn to Allah and make istighfar, and Allah will forgive us. Allah saying it in the Quran, فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا. That seek forgiveness from your Lord. إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا. He is the most forgiving. So daily these adhkars, dhikr towards Allah, dhikr of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and dhikr of istighfar. And do this. You won't feel it overnight. Give it several days, and then watch this tasbihat and tilawat of the Quran. It will spiritually develop. You will start seeing a nur and feeling a nur and sweetness of iman. You will enjoy your salah, and that increment of iman will work as a shield from disobedience. And automatically you'll realize that whenever you're coming and committing sin, automatically you'll feel the guilt. So this is what we need to do. We need to build that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now some of you might end up getting messages today, I can't deal with this anymore, we're ending this, I want to break up with you. Please don't go easy on that person, okay? No, I just wanted to end it on a light note, but yes, please. And this is the reason why I chose it, because like I said, it's a very sensitive topic, and it's a common situation in university environments, even outside. But wallahi, honestly, when I hear the students crying to me about these things, and I think, oh man, what do you guys know of love? This person fluttered her eyes in front of you and you fall in love. This guy just, walked in front of you with a thobe and he recited the Quran, or I don't know why he did something, and that's it, you fell in love, and now it's a heartbreak. Understand that these are all deceptions of the shaitan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the best of understanding. Sorry I took a lot of time. It's a very sensitive topic. Now I'm just going to open the floor.